So if I have not had a chance to meet you, my name is Carissa Eisenberg. I am the Associate Director of Pre-Award in the Office of Research and Sponsored Programs, also Research and Innovation. We kind of use both right now. And I am usually one of the first ones to look at proposals as they come through in the myProposal system. So if you are unfamiliar with myProposals or what proposals are, this kind of proposal, it is an electronic submission system that is internal. So when faculty or research staff are wanting to apply for a grant externally that is being submitted and conducted in the university's name using university time, resources, personnel, it does have to be reviewed internally and approved internally before it can be submitted externally. So this internal system is called myProposals. Sometimes you'll hear us refer to it as KC. It is specifically a U of I system, but it is based on QualiKS, which is a more popular version, but ours is specifically for the U of I system. So it has a few different tweaks with the rest of the KC universities. The platform is not connected to external platforms at all. Nothing carries over, nothing notifies the sponsor that you've submitted. This is completely internal. And we do ask that complete drafts are submitted to central office no less than 10 full business days before the sponsor deadline. Again, when we say central office, that is just the fancy system way of saying Office of Research and Sponsored Programs. That is coming to our office. So sometimes we do hear, don't you just click the button? Why do you need 10 business days? So we are a small office, and we are the central hub for everything that is pre-award and grant and innovation. And we have the authority in office to review and approve on behalf of the institution. So we are reading the sponsor's guidelines. Some are standard, some are not. If we need to create a new submission profile, we are creating that in our office. We will review all required documents. For some grants, that is 3 documents. For some grants, that is 17 documents. So those bigger ones, we really do need those 10 business days. If we need to request any sort of edits, if things are out of compliance or just missing, that gives us time to go back and forth with the principal investigator or any other personnel, especially if there's a subaward on it, that gives us time to communicate with the other institutions on the proposal. We need to get certifications from anyone listed as key or senior personnel. This is a lot quicker if it's one person, but if there are 10 people, sometimes it does take longer to get all of those certifications, which is just clicking a button, but 10 people logging in and clicking a button sometimes takes time. We get approvals from all unit heads. So if one unit is involved, that's one unit head. If there are 10 units involved, that's 10 unit heads that need to go in and approve. Same for next level approvers, whether that's a dean, executive director, if it has to go all the way up to a vice chancellor or the chancellor, that gives them time to log in. They are very busy people. Sometimes we need to consult with legal counsel, especially as of late, and that does take extra time. Not every proposal needs to go to legal counsel, but just in case, we do want to have that buffer time. And then we do submit on behalf of the university. And we don't want to say we have leniency, but we do try to get out every single proposal, even if it comes in late. But when there are times with a higher influx of proposals, some sponsors all want to get things out right at the end of the quarter, or if it's around a holiday where people are on vacation, or we just might have a lot of proposals in line. We really need to make sure we have those 10 days just so we aren't missing opportunities to submit. So again, we'll try. It's not guaranteed when it's late. And if it is a major compliance issue, we just can't submit it. So things we are looking for that you might not be aware of, we are making sure everything is in alignment with the federal regulation 200, which is also known as uniform guidance, which if you look at this picture is a lot of things. Sometimes we have to look at things specifically. Sometimes it's things we just know we have memorized, like cost principles. But if there are unusual circumstances, we do have to reference this, which could take time. We are making sure everything is in alignment with system policies, also called business and financial policies or BUSFIN. We are making sure everything's in alignment. Some things we have memorized, some things we have to double reference just because it's less common. Usually we're just looking at a solicitation, but for some grants, we have to go in and look at an entire policy manual. I am using NSF, National Science Foundation, as an example because they have probably the longest manual. It's over 200 pages. And we don't expect you to read all 200 pages. We'll do a lot of that for you. Obviously, we want you to know the basics, but we'll go into the weeds and get that figured out for you, which again, takes time. And then in the current administration and the federal climate with grants, those are the times we need to check with legal counsel. There are executive orders and injunctions and stops on injunctions. Everything is changing. Our legal counsel is trying to keep up to date with that. And so they are kind of our consult for a lot of these grants. So no, we're not just clicking the button. Even if you've read all the instructions, please, please, please do not just submit directly to the sponsor, because we are looking at compliance. The big word a lot of people don't like, sounds scary. We are here to make it a little less scary, hopefully. And we are looking for compliance to protect the university and the PI, because there are so many laws and so many regulations and policies. There are very few people on the campus who are authorized to submit directly to grant agencies. These are called authorized organizational representatives. Sometimes they're just called AOs, ORs, AORs. All of these are the formally, legally recognized people submitting to grant agencies. There are, what do you say, Lucia, 2 on campus, 3 on campus, 2.5. There are technically 3 of us. 1 is a delegate for when the first 2 are out of office. But those are the only people legally authorized to send these, because it is a legal agreement when you submit a proposal. And all of us are in the Office of Research and Sponsor Programs. We are looking for hidden terms and conditions. We are the ones who certify. It's in our name, so it's us on the line, not you. So we really don't like to make those certifications if we haven't had a chance to actually make sure we can certify that. And we're just checking for risks. A lot of sponsors are not going to be risky, but just in case, we are checking for that. And then we're certifying federal regulations have been met. University policies are followed. The proposal complies with sponsor guidelines. We don't expect you to be the expert. We want you to have the basics, but we are here to support you and make sure everything is in line with what it should be. So we prefer to use the central ORA account just to keep things consistent, make sure your award, your proposal isn't falling through the cracks. We have had a lot of instances in the last few years where things were falling through the cracks, and we are trying to clean that up. Some of those issues that are very real, these are not fake or made up. We have had PIs leave the university. They did not notify a federal sponsor in this very specific example. And all of the communication between the federal sponsor and that PI was going to that individual's email account. And IT had to give special access to find those emails, which could have been found way too late in this instance. We've also had some turnover in the office in the last few years, and administrators were putting things in their own accounts. And so recovering passwords was not possible, honestly. So we were trying to make everything consistent with the central account for when staff turnover does happen. Another issue, which I don't think has happened recently, but this was a few years ago, is a PI submitted a proposal on their own. It wasn't a bad proposal. They managed to get the award, but then they signed the agreement without telling anyone. So we didn't have a way to see the award, see the agreement, give them money through the university. So there was just this huge pause between actually being awarded and then getting access to the money. On a side note with that one, because they signed it, technically that agreement was not legally binding because they are not an authorized representative for the university. That is an even higher level of authority. That is exclusively with the comptroller delegate to make legal agreements on behalf of the university. Another example, submitting directly to the sponsor. The award letter was sent to them and the check was sent in their name directly to their campus office. So we had to send that check back and get it submitted to the right name and address. And then another one that we are really trying to check for is intellectual property conditions, because if a PI signs that away, that now cannot meet the fundamental research exclusion if they wanted to transport data internationally. They probably can't because we don't own the intellectual property. So, big issues that could have been avoided pretty easily. Next slide. So, in some cases, rare cases, maybe 1 out of every 100 cases, we can delegate submission authority to the unit, which does need to have an explicit request and good justification, and shouldn't be assumed to be allowed for every proposal that is similar to the ones we do approve. And we do expect to either have the submission confirmation forwarded to us or CC'd in the original email, just to make sure that we have a good documentation on file. We will usually approve this for maybe private sponsors where the unit already has a relationship with that sponsor. So it makes more sense to come from the PI. Or if the sponsor requires it to be submitted by the PI, obviously we can approve that. Just make sure we are aware so our records are aligned. However, we cannot delegate signature authority. That does have to be the comptroller delegate. A lot of background information back to myProposals specifically. It is part of the START system, which is University of Illinois' system-wide tools for administration of research and training. So you'll see that in front of a few of our websites, specifically myProposals, myResearch, and myDisclosures. If you have been doing the RNUA items lately, that is also part of the START system. I'm going to put a poll here. All right, so some of this may be new to some of you. Some of this may be old hat. Either way, hopefully you're getting something beneficial out of this. And today's training will operate under an assumption that all documents have already been developed by the PI. If you are a business administrator, we're under the assumption that the PI has provided the information to you. Either can initiate the proposal. It does not have to be one always over the other. I do not expect you to have a full proposal. So if you want to follow along in the training version, here is a link, which I will put in the chat again, to the training materials, and you can download my semi-AI created mock proposal. Do not use it as a good example. I promise it is not. A lot of it was AI trying to just respond to the solicitation. AI is not going to win grants anytime soon. As my disclosure as well, for those who are looking at this later. So if you are following along, the practice website is go.uillinois.edu/1. And that will allow you to log into a training environment for myProposals. Nothing you create is shared with central office. Nothing is being submitted officially. There are a couple items that are live, so just be aware that email notifications will still go to people if you put in their UIN or their net ID. So though everything is just visible on your own personal training platform, if you do invite someone, they will get an email notification. I'm pretty sure it's a link to nowhere, but I don't want anyone panicking, thinking they need to approve something and you just can't access it. It's not recommended to use the browser's back arrow. You should use the back arrow within the portal on the bottom of the page. Hitting that back arrow, just the website doesn't like it. It'll show you a bunch of numbers and links that are not helpful. And then a big one is always make sure, especially in the real portal, that you are hitting the close button before you exit the browser. If you just close out of your browser without exiting out of the submission specifically, it will cause an administrative lock and no one else can edit or approve on the entry. So it will show who has the lock, so we can email you saying, hey, can you log out of it? But if you're out of office, that might take a while. And if you want to look at extra resources, a lot of this comes from the Sponsored Projects Administration Proposal Field Guide, which Champaign has created, and the Aggregator Training Guide, which System ITS AITS has created. If you are looking at this in the future or a recording of it, these slides are available on our website. It's shared on the invite, and you can go through and look at the different screenshots. But I am going to actually go into the myProposals portal so you can see it live instead of with screenshots. And we will cover everything that is in these slides. And then eventually, and sometime in the future, this will be posted on our YouTube channel, which is under UIS Office of Research and Sponsored Programs. So without further ado, I'm going to pull that to my other screen. All right. So when you log in, it looks like a pretty basic screen. So I can check the chat in case there's questions. And there are different ways to get it to do the same thing. So if we are creating a proposal, my go-to is under the Researcher tab because there aren't a lot of options. You can just click Create Proposal. It's really straightforward. If you are the unit, you can still use that tab. It's not going to do anything harmful, but you can also create it under the Unit tab, which is a little more overwhelming, so I don't use it as often. But this you would create by going to Proposal Development and hitting the Add button. If you forget about those tabs, you can also search a task. What would you like to do? I would like to create a proposal, and that option does pop up. Other things on this very minimal home screen are your action list. This is probably, of this corner, what I use most. When you click that, it will show everything that is awaiting action from you. So when I click on that, it's asking me to complete any proposals I've started. It's asking me to approve any proposals that have been submitted to central office. It also likes to tell me FYIs when things have been completed. So if you do a lot and you get those FYIs, they can make your list look a little crazy. If you know a document number, you can do a document search. This isn't one I use very often, but each proposal has its own document number and document ID. So if you know the number, you can search for it. If you want to formally log out, this is where the log out button is. I don't think I've ever clicked that button, to be honest with you. You can just exit out of the browser without causing me issues. If you forget what certain things are, you need some information. This help button takes you directly to the AITS page and breaks everything down by item in the portal. So if you are on key personnel and you've forgotten how to add effort, click on that and it will give you information specifically for that tab. If you are not certain about the different types of compliance, information is available here. So when I go to create my proposal, whether I go from the create proposal page, the add proposal page, or typing in create proposal, every option is going to bring up very slowly a tab that gives us some basic information. This can be entered as soon as you know about an opportunity. This does not make you have to submit it. If you decide you don't want to pursue it, you can cancel it. No harm, no foul. It will not show up on any reports. We're not going to throw you under the bus on any data saying you changed your mind. It is just to keep us aware of what is and is not planning to go out. So a lot of this information you can enter, all of this information you can enter before you even have an idea of what your proposal is going to be, just if you're interested. So proposal type, more often than not, new is what you're going to pick. This is a proposal that has not been submitted in its current state. Even if it's a resubmission, it is technically new because you've changed it. There is no award code, no fund set up for this proposal. If your pre-proposal, like a letter of intent, a letter of interest, requires pre-award to sign something, if you are making a formal agreement that you will submit, that does need to be submitted. But typically pre-proposals do not need to go through our office. They are not a formal agreement. You are not legally bound to anything with a pre-proposal, so we don't have to have that on file unless you want us to. Continuation is if you have already won an award and you are requesting to extend the end date. So this would be a no cost extension. This is not changing the scope of the work. It is not changing the budget amount. It is just extending the period of performance. A renewal is, again, for something that already has an award number assigned to it. It is related to that award, but if you win, it will create a new grant code. And then a supplement or amendment is if you are changing the budget or the scope of work, but it is not changing end date of the period of performance. So in this case, it will be new. The lead unit is the only thing that you cannot change once you hit the save and continue button. So make sure you know who the lead unit will be before you submit this. If you make a mistake or it changes, you are able to copy the entry. Just make sure that you cancel the one that is incorrect. You can copy everything over and just change the lead unit. I'll show you how to do that after this first page. So when you are typing in the lead unit, everything at UIS is chart 4. So you will see all of these I have access to start with 4. If you are not sure of your org number, you can obviously ask your business administrator, or you can type in a keyword. So if I am in one of the science departments and I start to type in science, all of the chart 4 and one chart 9 organizations that have science in it will show up. One thing with this that is not super user-friendly is you can't just start typing. You do have to click into this white bar before you type in a keyword. So if I am typing in my own, I am in the Office of Research and Innovation. And lead unit is whoever is going to have administrative control of the proposal and the grant if it's awarded. Who is going to receive the fund code, who is going to be spending against the grant. That is the lead unit, people who are reporting, sending financial reports to the sponsor. Activity type. This is where I have to hold notes because we typically don't use most of these. Just kidding. My notes. I'm just going to go off with memory. So basic research is if you are doing experimental or theoretical research, there's no application, you're really just learning. Whereas applied research is if you're taking that basic information and you are applying it and trying to gain new knowledge from that application. Development is if you are developing or improving already existing resources. Sponsored instruction is specifically instruction targeted for student training or instruction. Fellowships are student as well. They are a subset of sponsored instruction. Typically, sponsored instruction will assess indirect costs, whereas a fellowship won't, so they are under different categories here. Clinical trials are not super common at UIS. I don't think I've seen one at all in our files. But if you are wanting to start that, we don't have a problem with that. Just let us know because we do have to get those registered into clinicaltrials.gov and follow a few more regulatory items. And then if your grant just does not fit into any of these categories, you would select other sponsored activity. So my sample one is, it is a developmental research. So I would choose that. It's to develop a curriculum, or that's what it is. Project dates, these are an estimate. You can edit this if things change, but because I am basing things on sample solicitation, I'm going to touch on how to find that information. So in my sample proposal attachments, I have a solicitation that is due the 4th Friday in February. So this will be, I believe, February 27th. And knowing that it is a federal sponsor, sometimes they will put a suggested start date. I am going to estimate that this will not start until next federal fiscal year, which starts October 1st, 2026. In my solicitation, I find where I've highlighted it. This is a 3-year project. See, $1 million for 3 years. So my end date is going to be 3 years from October 1st, 2026. And you want to make sure you're not putting October 1st to October 1st, because that is going to be 3 years plus 1 day, and it will mess with your budget periods that the system automatically puts in. So I will be putting in September 30th, 2029. Project title, if you don't know your project title, you can put TBD and change it before you officially submit it. And this is my NSF training video. Sponsor will be who we are receiving the funds directly from. So if we are submitting directly to the sponsor, that is all we need to put here. You can type in a keyword. I type in Science Foundation. it'll pop up. If you start typing in National Science Foundation, it'll pop up. You can also type in an acronym, and if the system has that acronym, it will show up. If you have tried everything, every acronym, every keyword you can think of, and it's just not showing up, you will type in either sponsor not listed or 116851, and then click this link. And it will take you to sponsor help, request a new sponsor. It will have you log in with your UIS credentials, and you'll give it a little bit of information. The one thing you will not have until we hit the save and continue button is the proposal transmittal number. So if I were to say sponsor not listed and click save and continue, again, it takes a little bit, especially in the training website. Eventually it'll show up and there's a transmittal ID up here. And this is the number they are wanting you to put into the request so that they can associate the sponsor with your transmittal ID. If I thought it wasn't listed and AITS comes back and says, hey, it actually is in there, I'm going to go in, promise I can spell, Science Foundation, and I'm going to fix that. In some instances, we are not submitting directly to NSF. We would be a subaward, and we are giving all of our materials to another institution. They are considered our sponsor in myProposals. So if Loyola is submitting, they are considered the sponsor. If they are submitting to NSF, NSF is now the prime sponsor. If we are submitting directly, nothing needs to go in this prime sponsor section. That is just additional information for subawards. So there are a couple ways you can move through myProposals. If you don't know all the details, but you know the budget, you can skip around. If you want to put the approvals in first or give access to other personnel, you can do that in the approval and access page. Or if you just want to go page by page, you can hit save and continue and just move through each section. So delivery info, submission by, your two options are central office, which is research and sponsored programs, or the unit. This is where you are requesting that information if the unit has a special request to submit directly. If you choose unit, we do just ask that you explain why in the notes. If there is a good rationale, we're going to approve it. I will let you know for federal sponsors, that is not approvable because their portals do not allow non-AOR submissions. Submission type, I have never seen anything besides electronic, but if you do happen to have to overnight it or send it through the mail, please let us know, especially in advance, so we can get that out on time. If it's electronic, obviously you do not need to put the number of copies. If it's any sort of paper, do let us know how many copies you need. And then let us know how it needs to be submitted. If it's to someone's email, tell us their name, tell us their email. If it's through an electronic submission system, you would enter that here. If you are not sure what the system is, it should be in your solicitation. So if I find this full proposal submitted via research.gov, so that is our portal. We do have accounts to that. We have admin accounts. You are able to make your personal PI account and associate it with UIS, and that way you can give us access once you are ready for us to review and approve within research.gov. And research.gov is really good at telling you if something is out of compliance. If you have the option between a portal and grants.gov, we usually recommend the portal. Grants.gov is not the best at catching those compliance things. Sponsor and program information, it does not show as required, but we really need at least the sponsor deadline type and the actual deadline. Whether it's a hard deadline, meaning you cannot submit after that time, or a target or goal, whether that is a goal for the unit or a goal from the sponsor. Some will have a target deadline that just says, if you miss the target deadline, then you will miss the first level of review, but we'll still accept it. In the case of unsolicited opportunities, there is no solicitation from the sponsor. You're kind of just asking for money and sending a proposal. you might have a target from the unit of when you want to get that unsolicited request to the sponsor. In our case, that solicitation was that last Wednesday in February. If I can find where it's highlighted, it's in there. So I would type that in. 2026 does not feel like it's as close as it is. And the last Friday is the 27th. Most sponsors will tell you what time it is due. Really check whether that is Central Time, Eastern Time, Pacific, to make sure that it is in on time. When it says submitter time, it is referring to the institution, not where the PI is located at the time of submission, because it is awarded to institutions. It's based on our local time. So 5 p.m. on this one. Notice of opportunity is telling us whether it's federal or non-federal. You don't have to get into the weeds of whether it's state or private. A grant is where we would receive an agreement, but we have control over the work. If it's a contract, that is not as common. It is where the sponsor has control of the work and we are essentially just service for hire. If it is unsolicited, where you are just kind of putting dealers out for opportunities, you would select that. If it is state, private, internal, separate, but those non-federal solicitations are under that category. And then sometimes we do want to review internal submissions when it is a higher level of internal, if it's system-wide instead of just UIS specific. In this case, National Science Foundation is a federal agency. And Opportunity ID lets us look up the solicitation in case you forget to upload that for us. And that code on this one is 22548. And most will have some sort of number associated with it. If you have already started the application in research.gov, it will assign a temporary ID. Most portals won't have this. This doesn't apply. You can leave that blank. And hopefully you haven't already submitted the proposal, so a final sponsor ID will not be available. That can be left blank. When you are the initiator, it does not automatically assume that you are working on the grant. You are just considered an aggregator. You are gathering the documents. So if you are, actually, even if you are the PI, you need to add personnel. When you do that, you can search by UIN, if you know it, by first name, last name, if you know how to spell it, or you can check the directory or the net ID. That is probably the easiest one to search for. It is letters before the @ symbol in their email. If there are multiple people that have the same first name, last name, it will pop up with multiple results. Because I used this very specific user ID, I'm the only one who popped up. There's probably no one else with my name. And I would hit continue. There needs to be one principal investigator no matter what. It will not let you submit without a PI. Other investigators might be your co-principal or your co-investigator. Different sponsors use different words for what that is. Or if they are a key person who is not one of those titles, you would select key person and different options will show up in the drop down. So if they're an advisor, a collaborator, faculty, all of these different options. If none makes sense, you would hit other. But these are people who are considered key or senior on your proposal. If you add them into personnel at this point, they do have to certify before we can submit it. So make sure if you are adding 20 non-senior personnel that you're not putting them on this as they don't have to certify as non-senior.
So I'm just thinking, so if you are trying to do something where you're working with a number of people, you want to put all the people that are going to be working on it with you in there, but you don't necessarily want to put people as key. Key looks, it's at the bottom, so it looked to me like that was the least involved, but that sounds like that's not right.
Right. So some sponsors only allow so many senior personnel. So I think NSF limits it to 5. But if you have, I think it's 1 PI and 4 co-PIs. But if you have someone who is doing a huge portion of the scope of work, they're just not considered a co-PI. Like if they're an advisor or if they are doing your evaluation, they're still doing a very important part. They're just not a co-PI. So I've seen a couple.
I wonder if co-investigator would be a better term for somebody who's in an office where you're collaborating with them. So you're gonna want their feedback, but you're not giving them a big chunk of the work to do.
Right. It's people that their supervisor needs to know that they're putting in a significant amount of work
Okay.
from their university effort. It's only happened once, and hopefully it's the only time it has occurred. Someone was added on a proposal and didn't know. They just said, this person is collaborating. And when I sent them a certification, they said, what is this? So it's really making sure they know they are involved and certifying that they know what they're expected to do in the proposals.
So I'm sorry, I'm trying to pull up the different levels, and I know what PI and co-PI are,
Sorry,
and then there's there's something like,
Yeah, myself twice.
where did it go?
It's called key,
Yeah,
key person.
there's key personnel, and then there's one other other category, and so I'm trying to figure out what category to be putting people into.
Yeah, so if they are a collaborator, if
Okay.
co-I or co-PI doesn't make sense, they're just a high-level collaborator.
Oh, I see, and that can go under key person. So, okay,
Yes.
I was thinking you said key person had to be somebody who's doing like a massive amount of work rather than just a collaborator. Okay, got it.
No, different
Thank you.
sponsors define them differently.
Okay.
So you can have other personnel.
And then co-investigator, what does that mean exactly? That's not a
I don't know the
PI?
difference between principal investigator and
Okay,
investigator.
okay, because that doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense to me.
No, I think it's just by
basically
sponsor.
the same.
Okay,
I think
So
sponsors sometimes
we
use
probably
co-PI.
want PIs and then key persons and then identify what
Yeah.
kind of. Okay, that's helpful, thanks.
Chris, a quick question. Is there any number limit regarding the key person? For example, in essence, I think probably there's no.
I think so.
Yeah, they do not put any number limit.
It's just PIs that are gonna be limited.
Yeah.
Yeah, PI, co-PI, that's fine. And the key person, you can list, for example, senior person, and I think very common, collaborate, very common, but you can pretty much set
Yeah.
as many you
Yeah.
What if
want.
you're working with people who are not on our campus and you don't have a UIN?
So this is just for people at UIS.
Okay,
Yep,
got
that's a good question. I'll say that to the crowd
Because
as
sciences, you do that all the time.
well. If you are collaborating with external affiliates, they don't have a UIN, you do not need to put them in this. This is specifically to get approval for our personnel. When it is usually a subaward or a contract, their grant office or their authorized representative has to approve their participation. We do not approve their participation. And technically, we also don't review their documents unless it is a very small business that requests it specifically. But other institutions have their own grant office. They should be reviewing their scope of work, their budget justification, their resources. We try not to touch that if we don't have to. And I will say for a lot of sponsors that require additional details, if you label someone as a key person, there is a lot more documentation we require from them. Some it is just a resume or a CV. Some it's called a senior personnel profile. Because this is NSF specific, there are 4 additional documents required for everyone identified as a senior or key person, which is a biographical sketch, 5 synergistic activities related to the proposal, collaborators and other affiliations, and current and pending other financial support. So key people have a lot more requirements than someone identified as other personnel. If you ever need more training on budgets or budget justifications in those categories, I'm happy to do those trainings, either campus-wide or individually. Cancel this involvement so I'm not sending out real emails. And it will automatically give you an error because I have not put in any effort. Or if someone is being paid on the grant or if they are committing time on the grant, their effort needs to be reported. And where you report it depends on whether it's paid on the grant and whether the employee is a 12-month employee or a non-12-month employee. So 12-month employees will report grant requested effort in person months in the calendar section because calendars have 12 months. I'm a 12-month employee. If I'm asking for 1 month of payment on the grant, I'm entering that here. Some people will put in their contract numbers. If you put in 12 months here, you are telling me that you are asking the grant to pay you 12 months. So make sure you are putting in the effort on the grant. For 9-month or 10-month employees, they will enter university effort during the academic year, an academic year effort. If they are asking for a summer stipend, that is when they will put summer effort. If this is a grant that is a technology grant, a conference grant, anything where you are not having personnel being paid on it, you can enter 0. Really doesn't matter which category you enter that in. 0 is valid, it just can't be blank in any of them. If there is a cost share, which is a lot more involved, again, for a budget training, I can go over that. That is what contributed effort is. That is effort that you are volunteering, but you have to track. If you are volunteering it and are not planning on tracking it, it's not required by the sponsor, it's not a set amount, do not put anything there. But once you have at least one of these not blank, it will let you continue. And very slowly. So the questionnaire is something that Champaign has set up for their campus. It is not set up for UIS at this time, so this one can just be skipped because there is nothing to answer. Compliance is anything that requires additional review from another committee. So if you plan to involve animal subjects or human subjects, if there is a biological safety component with reagents or rDNA, all of these need to be documented. We don't expect you to have already gone through the approval process at the proposal stage. But if you do anticipate that being necessary, if you are awarded, you would add a compliance entry. The type is whatever is involved. Again, a lot of these are not common on UIS's campus. Sometimes animal subjects, often human subjects, sometimes nothing. If it's nothing, you don't have to add anything. But obviously, if it does, we should be aware of it. If you have already gotten approval, you can let us know if it's approved at the expedited or full board level. If it's exempt, it will ask the exemption category. And pending is if you have applied without an approval yet, or you are intending to apply in the future. So you don't have to have already started it to put it as pending. If it is pending, you can obviously leave all of these blank. If you have applied, you can put the application date. If it is approved, you can put all of that information which is found in your approval letter. One I'm probably going to spend the most time on is the attachments and abstract page. This is probably the one that causes the most confusion. I've seen a lot of people who will just upload their solicitation and then submit it to us. While that does help put it on our radar, it doesn't really help us review and approve everything. We can't approve an idea, I guess, to put it. So that's why we say full drafts should be what's submitted. Obviously, you can put it on our radar however far in advance you need, but these final versions are what you're uploading to attachments. At minimum, UIS requires the solicitation guidelines, a statement of work for all of the employees that will be paid on the grant as key and senior personnel or co-PIs or the lead investigator, a budget, and a budget justification. Typically, those are required by the sponsor anyway. If it's incorporated into the entire proposal, it does not have to be uploaded or created separately. But if the sponsor doesn't require it, we do still need it internally. And then we need everything else the sponsor requires. So again, if it's a really simple proposal, just a screenshot of your answers to a Google Doc is fine. If it's a Word document that answers all of the sponsor's question, that's fine. If it is a more complex solicitation, again, I chose a crazy example so that you can see a crazy example. NSF has a lot. So in the solicitation, it might tell you additional requirements, but at minimum, we have to follow the NSF proposal and award policies and procedure guide, which is that 200-page document I mentioned earlier. In these documents, the procedure guide, I have reduced it to just some need to know information and annotated and highlighted. So at minimum, the sponsor needs all of these documents. So in my sample folder, I have all of these. Again, don't use them as a good example of a proposal. They are just there. But I would want to see all of these uploaded into myProposals because eventually it does need to go to the sponsor and we need to make sure there's nothing awry in any of these documents and making sure everything's compliant. And what compliant looks like would be in this very long document. Some things are simpler than others. Some things are about the font and the margin size, and some are about the content. So we are really looking at everything. We can't review the science. We are not experts in your field. We are expecting you to be the expert in your field, but we are checking the things in our field where we are to be the experts. So we are working together to make sure we have a fully realized proposal. So an abstract does not have to be a formal abstract. It should just have enough information that if we needed to forward it to someone else or for your unit head and the next level approver, they have enough details to know what you're doing without having to review a 75-page document. And then uploads, you can upload these as you finish them, or you can do them all at once at the end. I am going to upload, I believe it was 17 documents, all of which were listed in the solicitation and policies as well. So most of these documents will be categorized as other in type, and it does require you to enter the type. But things that are specific are the sponsor budget, the budget justification, the statement of work, if it is separate from the entire proposal. Final statement of work is if we upload something separate from what the PI uploads. You can upload the entire proposal if it is simpler and does not have to be uploaded separately into the sponsor portal. The internal budget is if you are using our template or your own template so we can see the calculations, whereas the sponsor budget is kind of just a flat budget. We can't really see where the numbers came from. Usually the internal budget is a spreadsheet. Sponsor guidelines are helpful to have, and then everything else would be other attachment if it doesn't fit otherwise. Try to go through these kind of quickly. This is a longer training than I expected. And the reason I am not skipping through this is data validation will prevent me from submitting and it'll give me an error report. It does not like to let me move on to the next page once I've started one. Okay. If you want to give us extra information, for example, if one of these needs signed, let us know. Needs maybe AOR signature, just so we don't overlook that one little line. Because I have 9 minutes, I'll just kind of explain the rest of these as quickly as I can in case there are questions. So adding budget, it's going to automatically pull the budget periods based on the start and end dates I entered on that first page. It defaults to 12-month periods. If the sponsor wants them in 6-month periods, you can recalculate and add budget periods and recalculate with those changes, or you can reset it back to 12 months if that is how you want it. Because you uploaded the budget doesn't mean that it carried over. myProposals is not a smart system. So you are just entering direct costs and indirect costs so that we have an overall total when we pull reports. If you are not sure where those are found in a budget, and if you decide to use our internal, those numbers are found near the bottom where it says total direct costs. So I would enter 235,831, 235,994 in year 2, and in year 3, 236,159. And then F&A costs are also called indirect costs, which should auto-calculate if you're using our template. And I would enter that 97,162, 97,230, and 97,298 into those different investments. And then ideally, in a perfect world, when rounding is not awful, that's a whole other story I can talk to you about during a budget training. It will add up and they should match across all documents. Cost sharing, we only do if the sponsor requires it, and we do it to the minimum extent required. It's not super common, but if you do have to do that, you would tell us where the cost match is coming from if you are volunteering your time. If we are collecting indirect costs that the sponsor did not let us collect, or if you are volunteering time or resources and we are allowed to,
Count those.
what was that?
You're allowed to count those.
Yeah. Yeah, so it is sponsor specific, so make sure cost share is allowed. And if I find my solicitation again, it will say in the solicitation if it is required or not required. I highlighted this, but NSF specifically prohibits cost sharing.
A lot of art stuff do expect it, but they will accept things like the indirect costs for,
Yeah.
like power facilities, et cetera.
Yeah, so the easiest one for us is if the sponsor, what was that?
I've had to do it a lot, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, arts does it a lot.
Okay, good to know. Arts does it a lot. I've seen it on a couple of science ones recently. I think it is becoming a lot more common
Yeah.
as well. But one that is the easiest to use is if the sponsor does not allow indirect costs and they let us collect the unrecovered, that is a significant cost share that is relatively easy to request and track.
So do you mean we can't collect indirect, but we can use what we would call indirect as our cost share?
Yep.
Yes.
So if the sponsor only lets
Yeah.
you collect 10% in indirect costs, we can collect the difference, what's called unrecovered.
Yeah.
So if our full amount is 41.2%, so we would be able to use 31.2% of indirect costs as a cost share. If you are offering up gift funds or state funds, that would be a hard match. If there is a third party donating their time or resources, if you are offering up resources as a cost share, all of those are viable. You would enter the amount. For items that are non-monetary, you would have to find the fair market value as the amount you are offering as a cost share, and then let us know whether it's mandatory or voluntary. Voluntary, we're going to look at with a little more scrutiny, just to make sure the sponsor either that'd be mandatory, highly suggests it to be competitive. That is when, if it's not mandatory, we would offer it just to have a higher chance of getting that award. So with approval and access, anyone listed as key personnel will automatically have access. They will be able to find it in myProposals or view all myProposals. But if you need to give someone else edit access, for example, if the PI starts it and they want their business administrator to finish it, they would need to give access as an aggregator to their business administrator. So it will default to one approval for the lead unit. You will have to change this TBD to whoever your first level approver would be. So Lucy is in my eyesight right now. So if this sends it to her, she knows it's not real. But if you don't know their net ID offhand, you can type in their UIN name or get their net ID. So you would need to add anyone that is a unit head for your key personnel. So right now this one just shows me, so I just need my first level approver, and then I would need to add my next level approver, which I will not do. That is the provost. He would get a real email. I don't want to panic him, but you would need that for each key personnel. Supplemental information. This is one that is most frequently skipped because people don't realize there are 4 tabs. Indirect cost rate is going to be the highest level the sponsor allows. So if it's the full rate, you would explain that it's the full rate. If they just don't allow it at all, if they have a limit of 10%, you enter whatever the sponsor allows. Basis, most of the time, is going to be MTDC, which stands for Modified Total Direct Costs. In my sample attachments, maybe. In the main box, I've uploaded our indirect cost letter, which tells us what modified total direct costs include. If a sponsor specifically says total direct costs, or they have a different category of what counts toward indirects, that affects what you would choose. But most of the time, when we are using our rate, it is modified total direct costs. Location, we do not have a mixed rate. There's on-campus and off-campus. Our on-campus full rate is 41.2. Our off-campus full rate is 17.8. Because you are using fewer resources, we don't collect as many direct costs. But it's where the majority of the work takes place.
Teresa, here's a question.
Yes.
So, for example, regarding the fuel station is regarded as
Uh-huh.
off campus, right? For example, the
That
fuel.
belongs to us.
Yeah, as part
That
of
would be on
the
campus.
institution, like off campus would
For
be.
example, Amacon, you know,
Yep.
It is on campus.
That's
It
part, that's
depends
part of
on
campus.
what we're paying. So whoever is in charge of that might need to tell you. If they are paying their own rent, their own light bill, that's considered off campus. But if UIS is paying for all of those facilities, it's considered on campus.
It comes
that
down to
makes
who maintains the physical property, who pays the electric.
yeah, I
who
think
pays the
that
water.
based on my understanding, the fuel station, especially like Amacon, should be off campus. That's why sometimes when we try to submit, you know, especially we are
Right.
involved field work, so we will choose this one. So actually we can, you know, charge a little bit less, you know.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
and-
so
And I do know it's possible, sometimes it has been possible in other places to say, okay, they're not gonna accept the 41.2. So that would be a conversation with you about whether we could come up with a
Yeah.
lower indirect cost rate, correct?
so if the sponsor does not allow it,
That's easy, that's zero.
that
Some
rationale
of them
is
just
enough.
won't accept a rate that high.
Right. So there's no additional making up on the unit's part. That is just sponsor policy. We are not asking you to find that. If you are asking us to voluntarily waive it, that's the conversation.
Okay.
Yeah. And we are right at 10:30. If you do need to go,
Only
don't feel
that.
like you need to stay. Once everything is compliant, you are able to submit to central office. It will tell you if anything is missing. When you hit submit, data validation automatically turns on. If you want to check it before submitting, it will tell you everything that will not let you submit. So I have not entered indirect cost rate. I have not answered those other tabs that I showed you on the supplemental information. So it won't let me submit until those are completed. And then the final major step that ORSP can do for you is in my research portal is asking for those approvals. Which, a second, because this is not my normal computer. But it will be just a check mark where you are asking them to, if they're personnel, certify their involvement, or if they're an approver, approve the involvement to make sure you're not offering up 100% of your time, because then you can't fulfill your teaching duties, or you're not offering gift funds that you are not allowed to. So I would click this notify button, notify selected, and write a little note if I need to, optional, but that would notify them that it's ready to be reviewed and hopefully approved. If they can't approve it, if they noticed an issue on the budget or something wrong with the format, they can send us a direct email saying, hey, I won't approve it until this is fixed. Please send me another notification when it's ready. And when we see all of these check marks and we have it compliant at the institutional level, we are ready to approve and send it